Welcome back. Jazz is more than just a genre. It is a deep sense of groove, rhythm, tell stories and even evoke emotions. Bokang Ramatlapeng is a rising star with her own unique thread into its fabric. From humble beginnings to the stage of stars, she's weaving her soulful voice into the tapestry of jazz. As we continue celebrating Jazz Month, we are now joined in studio by the singer and songwriter Bokang this morning. Very good morning to you, Bokang. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
And happy Freedom Day, I suppose.
Happy Freedom Day to you too. 30 years.
Yeah, 30
Sure.
years. 30 years, a very, very long time. So as a South African artist, how has your cultural background shaped your own understanding of jazz music and how you approach jazz music?
Good question. I think for me, knowing yourself or understanding yourself, it really does play a part in how you sort of express yourself in this art form.
Yeah.
I really express, or rather stress upon knowing I'm from South Africa, that I am from this beautiful continent, which is Africa. And I want people to also know that I actually understand that. And I want to showcase it in a way that's also, thought-provoking and also just inspiring and showing also what I can do, as a profession, which is jazz. Sort of putting those two worlds together, knowing your culture, knowing also just the beauty of jazz and what it stands for in this country, what it's done. Those two worlds come together, and I think it plays a good part of who I am and what I'm about as a South African artist and an African. I
quite like your juxtaposition of culture and jazz music because they beautifully, are intertwined.
Absolutely.
And having said that, I understand that you've been a mentor for young female jazz musicians,
yes,
especially in this male-dominated industry. And you've also advocated for women in jazz. So
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the obstacles and challenges that you faced as a female jazz musician in this industry.
I think, to really be honest, for me, getting into a space that's male-dominated, sometimes you sort of question whether you can, have the strength to sort of also say, I'm on the stage and I'm also worthy to be on that stage. Yeah. You sort of second-guess yourself because you think that because our gender is always known for being very calm and being very delicate, that they don't think we could also get, into that very hard-hitting, thought-provoking type of solos that you can take. I mean, for me, I remember when I got into the space, I used to second-guess myself, but now I've realized that I'm also worthy to be in this space. And I'm also glad that I have brothers in the industry that have also sort of opened up and seen our value on stage and sort of lift us up. And when they lift us up, I also feel like then there's a beginning of something that will change in the, space for women.
And it gets tricky because you end up trying to prove yourself in this male-dominated industry
Absolutely.
Instead of the actual delivery of your craft. And it really needs so much time and so much platforms to deliberate on this particular issue. And you mentioned your first public article called Women in Jazz. What are some of the things that you discovered in your research, pertaining to your own understanding of what jazz music is?
I think for me, in my understanding, to find out what jazz music is got to do with, because also in Women in Jazz, what I was trying to highlight is really their importance in jazz. Yes. It is not only just seen in singing, because a lot of female musicians are associated with just singing, but they are instrumentalists, they are producers, they are film scorers, and people really don't know about, women in those spaces. They always see us behind a pretty dress and holding the mic, which there are people really at the back, And so in that article, I was just highlighting the importance of their roles in jazz holistically, and not just on in a stage performance stage, but there's the background and sort of seeing that, oh, look, there's a whole industry of women that are actually doing other things besides being on the stage, and that also our roles are important in that space.
And then how do we then create opportunities for women in jazz?
I think most importantly, I'd love to see the support of the interest of seeing women actually being in jazz, because yes. The first instrumentalists that you always think of are male before you even start with us. So the curiosity of saying, hey, I haven't seen a female drummer, and I don't like to say female. I don't want to say it because it seems like, you need to always affirm and say, I'm a female drummer, just you're a drummer. And I'd love for us to get into that space where people just say, that's a drummer, and even if it's a female, there's no, oh, she's a female. There mustn't be a shock.
Why should it matter?
Exactly. So I feel like it would be great if we start seeing that in the space to sort of accommodate us in a way that we can do everything, and it's okay. that we can.
Yeah.
Just seeing that space opening up would be really great.
Let's now extend this discussion to curating your own music. How do you bring your own personal flavor and perspective into your own jazz music?
As you began and spoke about culture, I think that's where I really start, because that's where my story comes from. If I feel like if I can if anybody can locate who I am, and from the moment I open my mouth, you can see Gucci, she comes from South Africa. That's a very important thing. That's how I curate the stories. It comes from my background, how I grew up, obviously, and also just being socially aware. I mean, as Nina Simone had said, you know, that you really need to be aware about what's happening in your country. For example, we can talk about how jazz has sort of highlighted what was happening in our country about 30 years ago. And we had amazing artists documenting that. And I feel like in my current space, I want to be able to see what's happening right now in our country and document that, curating those stories and sort of bringing culture, being socially aware, and also just an understanding of self.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. You know, Bokang, lovely chatting to you, and I quite like your storytelling abilities, because that's what jazz music is all about anyway.
Thank you so much.
Great stuff. Thank you. That was singer and songwriter Bokang Ramatlapeng talking to us about her music journey into the tapestry of jazz, and she'll be back with another performance.